will be explaining my experience with the JET program interview. I know that people in Western Australia are having their interviews very soon, coming up in February, so I thought I would make a video sharing my experience with the interview. But yeah, let's just get straight into the process, how I got notified with the interview, the actual interview itself, some of the questions, and I think then I'll just run through some general dates and timelines when you may hear back, although I think every single year is really different. You will get lots and lots of different people on Reddit going a little bit crazy every time they get some notifications through email. Every single country is different, so Australia, New Zealand, America, every state in America, Philippines, Europe, everywhere is just different. So this mainly I guess applies to Western Australia or Australia, but yeah, I wish you all the very best, and let's get straight into it. So I have my phone here just so I can remember timelines and dates and things. So the very first notification, so I sent off my application, the very long application process, via post in, I think, like late November. And then I remember distinctly, so I was in my car on my way home from work, so I finished a shift at the library, and I got in my car, I checked my emails, and lo and behold, on January 21st, 2021, I got this email, and it was, Dear Miss Joy, or Dear Ms. Joy actually, Amy Joy. I can't even read my email. Okay, so let me start that again. Dear Ms. Amy Joy, congratulations on being shortlisted for an interview for the 2021 JET program. Your interview will be as follows. So, I obviously at this point reading the email, my heart was beating very fast, and as soon as I saw the word congratulations, you can kind of tell that that's, you know, a positive thing. So, of course I was like trying to read it as fast as I could. I kind of skim read it at first. I think I messaged my family and then I went back to the email and read it more thoroughly. So of course I was very shocked that I got accepted into the interview phase, and I was very happy that my application was, you know, a success initially. So that was my first foot in the door. So then it states your interview time. Interview time Tuesday, February 9, 11:20 to 11:50. Location was the Consulate General of Japan in Perth. It was a half an hour interview, and I believe my interview actually went a little bit over half an hour. But that was a good thing. Like, you kind of, if you just go into the flow of talking and, you know, having a nice conversation with the panelists, it's quite good. So then it reads on to say, you should have received an interview voucher from the embassy to complete and bring to your interview. If you have not received it, please let us know and we will send another to you. Please also bring some photo identification and be sure to arrive on time, as this is a job interview. So it is quite formal. Then it just, you know, has some general things that you must do. So at that time, it was like a kind of we had some restrictions with COVID in WA, like it is kind of now. We had to do the interview in masks, because at that time, masks were very, like, I was not used to wearing them, and obviously no one likes to be in them, no one likes to talk in them. So that was a little bit off-putting, but you know, everyone had to do it, so it was fine. And of course, at the moment in Japan, I've been wearing a mask every single day, you know, since I've arrived, basically. Unless I'm in my house, I don't wear a mask, obviously. Could you imagine? But obviously every time I step foot outside my house, we have to wear a mask. So it was good to get used to it at that time. so then that was that. So I then had to get mentally prepared and get ready for the interview that was happening in only like a couple of weeks away from that email. So I was searching all over the internet for interview tips, some possible questions. I found a really good website. So if you literally just type in Jet interview questions on Google, Tofugu, the website, has really good a really good article with preparing some tips, some tricks, some possible questions, and I just thought that was really helpful and quite thorough, and really actually helped me a lot, which was great. And also I found on Reddit, if you Google compiled list of ALT interview questions, they have a list of, I think, around maybe 50 possible questions, and I also thought that was really useful. So if you would like to Google those, I definitely recommend that, because quite a lot of what happened in my interview was also from, also mentioned in these articles and possible interview questions. So it was really good to prepare for that. If you just write down maybe, say, 20 questions that you think that the panel will ask you, and then just write down some possible answers that you could try and just not really memorize, but just have in your mind to answer, so you're not sitting there thinking, like, what do I say? How do I respond to this? You kind of have an answer straight away for those possible questions, and that kind of gets the interview going nice and smoothly. You don't really want to be sitting there for too long trying to think about like the best possible answer. Just answer pretty much whatever comes to your mind at first, which is what I did. So you kind of just go with what you're saying. Even if you get a little bit sidetracked, you can just sort of try and get back to the actual answer for the question. So I definitely recommend checking those websites out, which they really helped me. So around 5 days before the interview, so on February 4th, we got an email about a COVID lockdown, and stating that the interview on Monday and Tuesday will still be going ahead, but it was just to confirm what was happening with the press conference and things like that. So yeah, it was a little bit stressful at that time, not knowing if the interview will happen or if what will happen. But yeah, so they had interview on Monday and Tuesday. So I think I calculated that if they had like an 8-hour day on Monday and Tuesday, and they interviewed people every half an hour, that they would interview roughly like 32 people. But I actually don't know how many people they really did interview in Perth, so that's just a guess. But in the end, 13 people in Perth were accepted, which I think is a pretty good number. So that's around like a little less than half, so about 40-60 chance of getting in. So it's not too bad of a of your chances. Then the next day on February 5th, we got another email saying Jet program interviews to go ahead February 8th and 9th. So that was good. We got confirmation pretty quickly, and that kind of put our mind at ease. So that's good. Yes, so we got no further correspondence until like way after. So interview day. My interview day was February the 9th. I was very nervous. I brought a new dress from Maya, and I didn't know really how to approach it, but I just thought, I'll be confident. I just won't overthink things. I'll just get in the interview room and just answer the questions that they ask me. Like, that's all you can really do at an interview. So I drive there, I parked, the parking was pretty easy, which is good. Get a good spot, and I think I arrived like 10 minutes early. And I remember going up the elevator. I went to the toilet at first just to like go to the toilet. And then I went out the toilet, and then one of the interview panelists opened the door, and I was just about to sort of turn the corner and just take a seat and wait. But then he was like, "Oh, are you ready for your interview?" And at this point it wasn't even 11:20 yet. It was like maybe 11:15. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Like, okay, let's just do it. Let's jump right into it. So I walk into the room a little bit earlier than my actual interview time, and I sit down, and I'm like very, very nervous. But they're all very nice. All very nice people that were interviewing me. There was 4 people. There was a former JET ALT. There was a couple of people. I think that there are other 3 people who actually worked for the consulate. So it was a nice mixture of people. And so the lady who used to be an ALT, she's like an alumni. She initiated the interview, I believe. So she kind of just did the rundown, like check my name, make sure you bring your ID as well. You really need to remember that. Otherwise, I don't know if the interview can actually go ahead without your ID. So please, please don't forget to bring your license or whatever, your passport. So she ID'd me. I had to take my mask off for a second. Thank goodness I wore lipstick underneath. Could you imagine? And then I had to put it back on. And then she just sort of did the other confirmation. And that was pretty much the initial part of the interview. And yeah, it went pretty well. So they each asked their own set of questions. I have a list of questions that I wrote out straight after the interview, actually. So a question that I got asked was, what is a good teacher? What is a good teacher? Or what do you think is a good teacher? Something along those lines. And I believe I answered someone who is obviously patient, caring, understanding, someone willing to help, obviously students, that's their job. A good teacher is, you know, someone who properly organizes lessons, plans lessons, that will facilitate all abilities, kids learning, things like that. You know, what you expect to be a good teacher is all, you know, things that will benefit students, and someone as well who is actually there to support them as well, and to be yeah, just an all-round good person, and an instructor who they can trust and respect, all those kind of things. So that was a question that was asked. So yeah, so then they asked me what I would bring that represents Australia. So I took it pretty literally. I think they actually meant like materialistic things, like what physical things you would bring that represents Australia. So I said I would definitely bring Australian children books, like storybooks, like Possum Magic, Wombat Stew, just the really cool classics that we used to read as children that represent Australia in a fun and you know, fun and sort of simple way for learners of English. Then I also said I would of course bring, you know, like koala keychains, you know, stickers, that kind of stuff to give to students as like prizes or as just fun little things. And then I said as well, so my mum has this Vegemite Australian cookbook, and she's had it since I think I was born. Like, she's had it like forever, and it's a really good book. It's full of recipes that every single recipe uses Vegemite, such as curries and like soup, things like that. And we used to eat all the time this Vegemite curry that had Vegemite, peanut butter, and like some spices and stuff. And it's delicious. Like, it's a really good book, really good recipe. And I said I would bring that and maybe make some Vegemite meals for the students, and they really seemed to enjoy that. So that was good. I think that was a good answer. Something unique, something that is like distinctly as part of my history, that I can share with the students, and share Australian culture at the same time. So that was good. So the next question was how I deal with stressful situations. So I'm pretty sure I said something along the lines of I try and do things, you know, in smaller, more achievable chunks. I like to write things down and organize and plan things. So if things are getting too stressful and too much, I just sort of take a step back and I analyze what's happening, what I need to get done. Like I prioritize things. If I can get things done out the way and just tick things off a list, it makes things a lot easier and nicer to deal with. So far nothing's really been too stressful, to be honest. There has been a lot of marking, student marking. So this, like literally as soon as I came back from winter holiday, I was given 200 student papers to mark. And then the following week, as soon as I finished marking those 200 papers within a couple of days, I was then given 200 more, 200 more different papers to mark. So obviously on top of doing lessons and planning things and blah blah blah. So I guess things do tend to pile up pretty quickly, but if you can just prioritize, do things that you can achieve, I guess quickly first, and then move on to things that may take a little bit longer. So at least you've done, at least you know, you can feel a little bit accomplished that you've done some things before you tackle the big task. So or do things first, of course, that need to be done first, and then move on to things that can be done later. So yeah, stressful situations, you just kind of take it as it comes. You just don't try and get, you know, overwhelmed or overthink things. You just I don't know. It's hard to sort of it's hard to give advice about that because everyone deals with stressful situations differently. But I guess, yeah, just try and not let it overtake you, and there's other things to think about. Things aren't worth stressing over sometimes. So yeah, but I think that's pretty much how I answered the question, was just take one thing at a time, write a list down, just be mindful, and take some time out if you need to. Just relax for a bit if you're really getting overwhelmed. Just stop what you're doing, take some breaths, and just recoup. Have a tea, have a coffee, and then take some breaths, and then get straight back into whatever you were doing that was stressing you out in the first place. The next question was how I would deal with isolation. So they don't mean COVID isolation like in WA isolating, or isolating like in that context. They mean isolation in general, like being away from family, friends, living alone for the whole time. So I just said, actually, I was just honest and said I actually really love being alone. I much prefer to be alone most of the time anyway, so it's actually going to be quite ideal for me. Every day, every weekday, I talk to teachers and students and things, and I interact with all different kinds of people every single day anyway, so you're not really actually that lonely while you're here, because you're working full-time during the week, so you're with people all the time except for the weekends. In that question I just said, you know, like I don't really mind being isolated. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what I said. So it's up to you how you answer that. Of course, a lot of people prefer being with people, of course, and a lot of people maybe find it hard or struggle being alone, but if you can think of ways to overcome that. But yeah, of course, you will most likely get to meet your other ALTs in your city before you leave, so you'll have like an orientation and like another event with the ALT, so you can contact them and you know, get their social media and things like that, and yeah, so it's not really that bad, to be honest. It's not really that isolating. Okay, so next question is how it would be like to live rural or in the city. So would I rather like a country area or live in a city area? So I did say I preferred rural. I did put in my you know, my 3 top places that I would like to go was mostly rural areas. So I put Shizuoka, Yamanashi and Fukushima. I definitely do prefer living in the country, but I also don't mind the city. So I really didn't mind both. So at the time I said either way I would be very happy with whatever I got. Of course I do prefer the country, but if I get the city, that's, you know. So yeah, country and city both have their pros and cons. They have their advantages and disadvantages, just like everything else. Of course the country, you are really quite isolated in the country if you're really like far away from everybody and buildings and things. You're literally in the bush or like in the trees and the mountains. So living there for a while can get quite lonely. And of course the city can be really busy and quite crowded and quite overwhelming too, with so many people. But of course, you know, there's good and bad things about both. So my tea's gone cold. So yeah, I said I wouldn't mind either, because, you know, I'd be happy to get wherever I go, I'll be happy. So that was pretty much my answer for that. But it's up to you. Like if you're really adamant of going into the city, you really want to stay in Tokyo, Osaka, wherever, you know, you can say that. You can say I really would prefer to live in the city because of these reasons, or I really would love to live in the country because of these reasons. So don't be afraid to sort of state your honest opinion or your explanation about different things, because that's what they like. They like honesty, and yeah, so that's pretty much for that question. They also asked my future plans, so I guess life after JET. So my future plans, so at that time, and still currently actually, I am studying Master of Teaching for secondary education. So I said that my future plans would be to finish obviously after JET, I'd finish my master degree and I would go on to be a secondary teacher in Australia. I said that I would love to be a Japanese teacher, or of course media art teacher, because they are both my majors. And I said that I would really love to share my experiences with people in Perth in Western Australia about the JET program, and of course when I do become a secondary teacher, I can then pass on my knowledge and experience firsthand to students about life in Japan, living here, what it's really like, and hopefully give them the best kind of advice and teaching and learning experiences that I can by living here myself, and then, you know, passing on that knowledge to students in Australia and letting them know, you know, what it's really like living here, and hopefully teaching them some useful things about life in Japan, such as going to the post office and asking for postage stamps because the amount of times I've had to do that and I forgot how to do that, then yeah, I think that could come in handy, and maybe how to catch the train, things like that, and some other different cultural things that you wouldn't automatically think of by just, you know, surface level learning about Japan, because there are so many deeper things in Japanese culture that people don't really talk about or don't really teach you, and I think it's really useful to know that information and to share that with other people. So I really rambled on for that, but so yes, your future plans. Think about what you'll do after JET. So I know it might be a little a little bit hard to think about, especially if you are planning to be in the JET program for like 2 to 3 years. Like, thinking that far ahead is hard for some people, especially if like JET is your future. Like, if you're thinking you'll stay here for that long, thinking after 5 years, like, it's a lot to think about, and it's really hard to decide. But anyway, just try and kind of come up with some kind of like 5-year future plan if you can, even if it's like to just study again, or to get a job, to get some kind of job that you're hoping for, maybe even stay in Japan. I'm not really sure what your future would be, but whatever you want to do, try and think how you can word that in the interview, and try and maybe relate it back to Japan and sharing Japanese culture, because at the end of the day, the JET program is kind of like a cultural exchange, so they really want you to kind of come back to Australia and make use of your experience on the JET program when you come back. So yes, try and think of your future if you can. Ooh, okay, so then they asked me if I could explain Australia as a country to a group of year 7s. So I had to demonstrate how I would explain Australia to a group of year 7s. And I'm not sure if they asked this specific question to everyone in the interview. They might ask you something similar to do a demonstration, but I'm not sure what kind of question they may ask, but something along those lines. So my question was to explain Australia. So I am actually really bad at Australian history and like knowledge, like general knowledge. I think I know more about Japan as a country, like geographically and culturally, than Australia sometimes. But anyway, at that time I was like, Australia has 8 states and territories, and like, I think I talked about our animals and maybe our cuisine, fairy bread, maybe our sport. I can't honestly remember how I demonstrated Australia, but I did my best, and I tried to remember everything I could about Australia, and yeah. And I think they only gave me like maybe a minute or two to talk about, to demonstrate Australia to this group of hypothetical year 7s. But they seemed to enjoy my demonstration, and I checked afterwards, like I checked all the facts that I blurted out during that demonstration, and I'm pretty sure I got the facts correct. So that's good, that's a bonus. So try and know Australia. If you, like, of course if you're Australian, you don't think of all of our geography and all this kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis, because it's not really, it's not like you Google it every day. So try and refresh yourself on just basic Australian knowledge. So yes, and also they asked me what I would bring to the school. So what I would bring through my experience, or like what kind of new thing I could introduce to the school. So I said, of course I love making videos and I love art and creativity. So I said I would love to help out with like a video making club, or in the English club, do some videos and help them, make some skits or something, and maybe film a little movie. Use those kind of skills that I have, and pass them on to the students. And they really seemed to enjoy that, so that was good. So yeah, so use what you love to do, your passion. Like, of course, if you have another skill or something else, definitely use that to your advantage and bring that into the interview, and try and work a way to incorporate your skill or your talent or your love or your interest into, you know, what you can bring to Japan. Okay, next question. So then they asked me how many years would I like to stay in the JET program. So that was a really tough question, and initially I was really adamant of only staying for 1 year, because I had my studies to come back to, I had my job to go back to, so I did say it between like 1 and 3 years, but yeah, I think it also depends on your circumstances. If you plan on, if you're able to stay longer than like 2 or 3 years, then that's quite good, but yeah, I'm not really sure if there is an ideal answer for that, but it's up to you how long you want to stay for, of course. It's a yearly contract, so every year they will ask you to extend. Try and think of a reason of why you want to stay for 1 or 2 or 3, and then yeah, that's pretty much that. I don't know if that really has a big factor into it, if they want people to stay for longer or not, but yeah. Then they asked me a question about how I would deal with challenges and change and adapting to things. So that's kind of like the question about dealing with stress. So with challenges and changing and adapting, I quite like a good challenge. So when I get presented with a problem or a task, I get really focused, and I will not stop until I accomplish or I achieve or I complete the task or the challenge or whatever. So yeah, I think that was pretty much my answer. I just said, you know, like, I accept any challenge that comes my way. I do it to the best of my ability, and I really do get really focused. So if someone gives me something to do, I will do it without hesitation. And change and adaptation, so you know, I'm pretty flexible. I will just go with it. Like, if someone asks me to do something, I'll do it. And then if someone asks me to do something else, I'll then be like, okay, I'll do that. So I'm pretty easy. I'm quite easygoing. So yeah, I just go with the flow, just hope for the best. And yeah, just stay positive and just don't get too worked up over some things. So yeah, you just kind of have to accept things for what they are, and just at the end of the day, just look at the big picture and just be very grateful. Well, I'm very grateful that I'm even here and accepted, so that's reason enough for me to just be adaptable and accept any change and just go with it. So yeah, okay, then they asked me something really specific to me, and maybe other people that are vegan, but I'm vegan, so and they asked me how I would deal with people asking why I'm vegan. So at first I thought this question was a little bit strange, and also, like, I didn't really know how to answer. That was a bit of a curveball because I did not prepare for this question, and I don't even know how I answered. I think I just said, well, I was vegan every other time I went to Japan. No one really seemed to question me about it then, and I did manage to find some good food and things like that. Like, if I was at a restaurant, I would just usually order like rice or noodles or vegetables, whatever, tofu. So I managed to deal with it, you know, all the other times I had been to Japan, and yeah, so I dealt with it fine every other time I had been to Japan and didn't really come across any problems. So I just said, you know, like, I'll answer honestly. I'll just say I'm vegan because I love animals. You know, there's not really much else I could say. And then I thought, like, a little bit after that, thinking, like, wonder why they asked me, like, they did keep on asking me about this as well. Like, they kind of asked me a few times about being vegan, and then, you know, now that I actually am in Japan, I understand I understand why they asked me. So when I tell people that I'm vegan, because they offer me some food, they really do seem shocked or like they might not know what it means. So it seems like it's a new concept to them, but there are vegans in Japan, and there are definitely vegetarians, but I guess it's not as well known here as in Australia. So Australia, you know, by now everyone knows what a vegan is, and there are so many different options in food and things like that you can get over there that's vegan. But in Japan, it is quite a rarity to come across anything vegan in the grocery store, and let alone an actual vegan cafe or restaurant. But yeah, so I had to think on my feet. I was like, man, like that was, I don't know if I answered that very well, and that was a bit of a shock question, because I did not prepare for it. But so be prepared to get asked a question that was on your application form. So they will have your application form in front of them, and they will read off some of your answers to those questions. So I know it was probably a good few months ago since you probably submitted those applications, but try your best to remember what you wrote on them, just in case just in case if they ask you anything that's on there. Okay, so next question. So it is what I would do if the teacher made a mistake in the classroom. Like, what would I say if a teacher mispronounced a word or said something that was maybe incorrect? What would I do? So that question really threw me as well. I don't know if I really properly prepared for that question, and also to this very day I still don't know the correct answer or the correct response to this question because it's a really tricky thing to answer, because like what do you do? Like you can't so I think what I said was, if a teacher did make a mistake, like they pronounced something incorrect while explaining something, I would not just interrupt them and just like correct them. I would just let them continue, and then maybe once they had finished their explanation, I would then maybe reiterate what they said, or use that word that they used incorrectly in the correct way without explicitly saying that they did it wrong, and then sort of just carry on like I wouldn't make a big deal out of it, like it's no big deal at all. People make mistakes all the time. Even native English speakers make mistakes with pronunciation. I make mistakes all the time with pronouncing words. Like I still can't pronounce some words. So yeah, that's a really tricky thing. And of course you don't want the students to receive the wrong information. But of course you do not want to embarrass a teacher in front of the students and sort of demean them a little bit. So it's you got to really balance it, and you got to sort of handle it professionally and tactfully as well. So I think maybe, yeah, I guess just letting them keep on talking, and then maybe later on in that lesson just remember what that word was, and maybe just try and incorporate it into some sentence or something while you're explaining to the class yourself. And yeah, it's just, you know, things happen. It's not the end of the world if a teacher makes a mistake, or if something gets mispronounced. It's not a big deal. So yeah, that was my answer, but of course there's probably better answers than that. There's probably much better solutions. So yeah, that was a tricky question. Okay, so I think one of the last questions was if I got to suggest a presentation on English for an assembly, what would I suggest? So that was also quite a tricky question, because there's just so many things that you could present on about English, and I'm pretty sure I just said like food, like Australian cuisine. It'd be really interesting sort of to talk about. Everyone loves food, you know, everyone loves, you know, learning about different cultures and their different food specialties and things. Even Japan, the different cities have so many different specialties, and it's great. And I find a lot of students in my school really enjoy cooking, actually, home economics, and that's I find when I read their essays or when they write about things, a lot of the students tend to write about their cooking and how they enjoy cooking for their grandparents and their parents. I also think that there are many different answers. Like, you could literally present about anything in English. So that was a tricky question, but if you can think of a few different things, interesting topics to present about in an assembly, maybe get your thinking caps on and start brainstorming some interesting answers, because I think cuisine was quite a very obvious answer. Not a very creative one. I think I just thought on the spot and just was like, yep, cuisine, Australian food. So if you have time to think about a topic, then definitely think about it, because there's probably so many better things to talk about. But yeah, so that was pretty much it. So so all 4 panelists asked me different questions each. They were all so friendly, very kind, and it was like, I guess as you kind of went along, it became less intimidating. But then at the very end, there was a Japanese section. So again, on your application form, you put what level of Japanese you are. So if you're like beginner or intermediate, advanced, they will take that into consideration. And so this last section in Japanese is not, apparently, it's not sort of marked towards your total score in the interview. It's just like a bonus section just to see what level you are in Japanese, and to see if you can, hold a conversation, or if you know any Japanese at all. So I was very nervous about this section, so I really focused on sort of recapping some of my Japanese phrases and things like that for this specific section. So they asked me, each question, I guess, became progressively harder. So the first question was like, what was my name? And I remember asking if they could repeat that question because I think I was just too overwhelmed by everything, by all the previous answers and questions, and then they asked me this, and it was like the most basic of the Japanese questions you could get asked, and I asked if they could repeat it. Oh my goodness. But anyway, so they did, and I was like, oh, of course, Amy. That's my name. But yeah, so each question became progressively a little bit more difficult. They asked me, I think, about traveling. They asked me about traveling in Japanese. They asked me, a couple of different other things in Japanese, but I remember around the 10 question mark, it just became a bit too hard to understand, and I had to just sort of say I didn't understand in Japanese. I'm sorry, sumimasen. And then they kind of were like, okay, that's alright, and they stopped that section. So the last section of the interview, after the Japanese section and after they kind of wrap everything up, is if you have any questions. So try not to be shy and just say, no, like, I'm okay, thank you. Try and think of a couple of questions before the interview for you to ask them. It just kind of shows that you're, inquisitive, and that you do enjoy asking questions and receiving answers and things, and that you're very interested and motivated. So try and ask them a couple of questions that weren't covered in the interview. Maybe something along the lines of like life in Japan, coronavirus, maybe the situation over there, maybe something to do with the school, like public and private school systems, what kind of school you might be put into, elementary, junior high, high school, maybe how many schools you might be placed in. Yeah, just anything that maybe comes to your mind, but my advice is to try and think of a couple, before the interview, so that way you have them locked into your brain and ready to just ask when that time comes. So you're not sort of just pondering for like 5 minutes and they're just like, was she gonna ask a question about? So yeah, try and think of at least one question for you to sort of, you know, ask and get a good response to. And then if you do get a good response and then maybe another question comes to your mind, that's a great opportunity just to keep that conversation going and ask another question if you have it. So yeah, and then I remember ending the interview with a Japanese phrase, and then I just said like "Osaki ni shitsurei shimasu," and then just said like "thank you very much" in Japanese, and then of course I bowed and they escorted me out the room. And that was pretty much it. I left. So then it was the waiting game. So after the 9th of February, I waited and waited. I checked Reddit almost every day to see if anyone else had got their interview results. I refreshed my emails all the time. But then I remember coming back to my car after university at Curtin, and I got back in my car, got in my seat, and then I just checked my emails real quick before I was gonna drive home. And then I saw in my inbox at 5:15 p.m. on the 4th of May, so about 3 months after, an email that said JET program interview results. And I was very, very nervous and my heart was beating very fast, and I opened the email and it said, "Hi Amy, thank you for your patience. Please see the attached letter regarding your interview results." So it didn't actually have the results in the email body. You had to click the PDF attachment, and I was like, oh, I didn't want to click it. Did not want to click it, but I obviously clicked it. So I clicked it and I was like, come on, open it up. I was like trying to see if it had like the word "unfortunately" or "congratulations," because you can kind of tell with those two words what the outcome is. But so it said, "Dear Amy Joy, it is our great pleasure to inform you that you have successfully passed the second stage of the screening process for the 2021 JET program year and are now on the final shortlist for the ALT candidates." And then it goes on with more information. It gives us all of these different forms, extra forms and things to submit, and deadlines, due dates, all extra information. And after reading that very, very first line of that letter, I was like, oh, I didn't know what to do. I screenshotted it, sent it to my family group chat, and yeah, so it was all happening, and I was very, very overwhelmed and very shocked that I was accepted, very, very grateful, and yeah, I was just so surprised that I had passed the interview stage and was now accepted into the JET program. So yeah, that pretty much was the process, and I know that it will probably change, you know, year to year. The questions may be different, they may be similar. The timeline also will probably vary as well. So of course with COVID, things were a little bit up in the air, you know, but that's what happened for me. But if you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments section. I am more than happy to answer anything, and yeah, if you're interested in another video maybe explaining the rest of the process, what happens after the interview, after you're accepted, and the rest of that, please let me know as well. And if anyone who is thinking of applying this year in around October, November, if you would like a video about the actual application process and what to include in your statement of purpose and your reference letters, things like that. Also let me know if you're interested in a video like that to help you if you're thinking of applying this year. If you're not accepted, try again. Don't be disheartened or discouraged. It's a very tedious process and quite competitive, so you know, it's not everyone unfortunately can get in, but if you're unsuccessful this time, there's always next year, always next time, so please try again. And yeah, you never know. So Yep. Anyway, this video is probably going for a long time. If you're having your interview soon, I wish you all the very best. Just, you know, be positive, be confident, and you'll be okay. So yes, good luck everyone, and please let me know how you think you went in the comments as well after your interview. And yeah, ganbaro! Good luck everyone! Bye bye!